Hey everybody, welcome to this 90-minute program where we talk a lot about sports betting and fantasy sports. It is called The Sweat. Your name's Jessie Coffield. I am Emerson Lotzia. So we're going to go game by game through today's NFL slate. I'm really excited about it, and so is Jessie.
I'm super excited. I know you guys are excited. You have questions.
Let's go!
You know, we probably have answers, so get those questions in Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. That's where you can ask them. And if you're watching us on Facebook, we have a special added bonus for you. Questions.
Ooh, so they get to answer questions.
Polls.
Oh, and they get to vote?
Yeah, they can comment.
It's your vote. It's your right, people.
It's honestly thrilling stuff. So go on over to Facebook, answer those polls, questions. We're going to get people, our analysts, our panelists, answering those questions live on the air.
Let's go ahead and put our first panel to work, shall we? And that panel consisting of Steve Buchanan, Jeff Bowert, Gary and Thorne, all of them DraftKings contributors. Steve, Baltimore traveling to Buffalo looking to stay hot. Birds have won 8 in a row. Did they make it 9 in a row and cover that 6-point spread in Buffalo?
Yeah, so I think Baltimore can win in this game. I'm just not 100% sure that they're going to cover here. Buffalo 8-3-1 against the spread, which is the best in the league. Baltimore's only 6-6 against the spread, but they have covered in 5 of their last 6 games. I mean, look, talent-wise, obviously you give the nod to the Ravens in this game here, but like I mentioned, Buffalo's been a very strong team against the spread, covering 72% of the time this season. So definitely think the Ravens can win this game, but I think this is going to be a really, really close game.
Good morning, Jeff. Is it going to be close in your eyes?
I actually don't think it's going to be a close game. I think the Ravens are going to roll here. You really start comparing these two teams, and to me, Baltimore is just a better version of Buffalo. Buffalo is also biggest weakness is probably guarding against the run, which is what the Ravens do the best. I really feel like with a healthy secondary, Baltimore is going to be able to get a little bit of pressure on Josh Allen, put the game on his shoulders. Earl Thomas back there has some good corners. I think Baltimore is going to win by quite a bit.
Gary, in past 4 times, though, the Bills have been an underdog of 6 or more in Buffalo. They've gone 4-0 against the spread, bud.
Yeah, look, they're fantastic ATS, and no one's going to take that away from them, but this is a different animal entirely. I'm very much on the side of Jeff here. I just think when you look at what the Bills' biggest weakness on defense is, it's defending the run, and they are now facing maybe the best running team we've seen in a half decade in the Baltimore Ravens, at least the most diverse in terms of the ways they can attack you with that ground game. Buffalo is 5th DVOA against the pass. They are 22nd DVOA against the run. And then, you know, there's the narrative that Buffalo does so well at the Ralph. And while they have been pretty good in Buffalo the last couple of years, it's not quite been the case this season. And Baltimore has an average scoring margin of positive 22.7 points on the road so far this season. They don't care where they are. They're the best offense in football.
Best offense in football. Point total in this one is 44. Jeff, over or under that mark?
Oh, I'm going to take over just because I do think Baltimore is going to be able to put up points. I don't love this total because I do feel like the Buffalo offense is in a tough spot here. But again, Baltimore is going to be able to put up a lot of points. And if they get to 30, I think this is going to have a real good shot at going over. So over.
Gary, and you going over?
Yeah, I'd rather bet the spread, but 5 of the last 6 Baltimore road games have gone over. I just have a lot of faith in this Ravens offense. So yeah, I'll take the over here.
Steve, 3 for 3 on the over?
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo has not been a strong team with the over. They're 3-9 on the year. This is the second highest total that they've been involved in, but this is just a very low total for a Baltimore team that's averaging over 33 points a game. I mean, they're just the highest scoring offense in the league right now. It's real. I would not be comfortable taking the under in this game. You know, like these guys said, maybe Buffalo has some issues with moving the ball, but 44 just seems like a really low total for a game that the Ravens are involved in.
No surprise, Lamar Jackson, most expensive quarterback, 7,400 on DraftKings. Gare Bear, would you roster him?
Yeah. I just think he's always a good play. I'm not saying you have to play him. I'm not saying you need 100% exposure, but there is never a situation where Lamar Jackson is a poor play. He scored at least 26 DraftKings points in 10 of 12 games this season. I think Baltimore's going to score a lot of points in this game. I think they have a high implied total. You are perfectly validated in paying up for Lamar.
All right, Steve, how much exposure you need to this guy?
I mean, look, kind of like what Gary said here, like he's just someone that you can just lock into your lineup every single week. This is somebody who has 362 rushing yards on scrambles alone. Like, it's just been absolutely ridiculous what he can do with his legs. I know that the price tag is very expensive. I know there's a lot of big names on this slate, like Christian McCaffrey, like Dalvin Cook. But look, if you get Lamar Jackson into your lineup, you do it.
Jeff, how much does the price tag scare you?
I think it's a good thing, especially in big GPPs this
Yep.
week. It just means that he's not going to be the highest owned quarterback, in my opinion. I don't think there's going to be any quarterback that's super chalky, which makes it nice. So it is kind of a good week to target Lamar in that respect. I think the matchup's fine. I think Mark Ingram is actually in a more interesting spot. I think he's got a lot of upside, especially under 6K. I would probably rather go with Ingram if I'm choosing between the two, just to get a cheaper exposure to the Baltimore offense. But look, Lamar it's a fine spot. Like he could easily go off here.
All right, next up on the 1 p.m. slate, a great matchup between the 49ers and Saints. Steve, Saints, 2.5-point favorites at home. Do you like New Orleans here?
Yeah, I like them a lot here, getting them at such a low spread. I mean, both teams have been very strong against the spread, but the Saints are just putting up so many points right now, averaging 24.8 on the season, 31 over their last 3 games. They're just absolutely clicking on offense. And this 49ers defense has not been as strong as we saw them in the beginning of the year. They definitely have some holes on their defensive line. Is not as strong as we've seen them, so I do like New Orleans a lot in this spot.
Jeff, you feeling the Saints today?
Yeah, this is a game that I'm really having a trouble calling. I kind of just want to take the points, but I am going to go with the Saints here as the home favorites. Look, it's just a tough stretch for San Francisco. I mean, coming in off Baltimore, and it's kind of one of those things like we used to see when teams would go up against Seattle and the Legion of Boom. The next week, they often be bad against the spread. I just think it's too much to ask San Francisco to get a W here, coming off a big game against Baltimore on the road 2 weeks in a row. Saints are playing well. I'll take the Saints here.
Gary, and 67% of our viewers think the Saints will cover the spread.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't really knock anyone for liking the Saints. They've been one of the most consistent teams in all of football this season. Sort of like Jeff, I don't really have an inclination here. I don't really have a need to bet this game. I think it's just the 2 best teams in the NFC by DVOA. But that said, San Francisco has been the best team by DVOA in their conference. The Saints are only 3-7 ATS their past 10 home games, which is the narrative that usually gets thrown out around the Saints. I don't know. When push comes to shove with 2 teams this close, just give me the points.
Jeff, over or under 44.5 points in this one?
Yeah, I like the under here. I mean, we're talking about 2 stout defenses. Good, especially good against what the other team does well, too. So I really feel like a 23 type of 20 game is kind of on tap here. I like the under.
Gary, and is the over a long shot in your eyes?
Yeah, I think so. And I hope people got in on this at like Monday or Tuesday, because this was 47 at one point.
Oh,
Like I
damn.
said, it's down to 44 and a half now. So it's pretty clear where people think the money is going in this game. But I can't really blame them. 2 great defenses, and also 2 of the slowest paced offenses in the NFL. Both these teams rank bottom 5 in the league in terms of pace. So you're going to look up at one point, and each team's going to have 1 drive to their name, and the first quarter is going to be ending. So it's going to be that kind of game.
Yeah, Steve, is under the obvious choice here?
I mean, if you would ask me at the beginning of the week, then yes, I definitely would say the under is the obvious choice here, but it's come down so much that I'm actually kind of thinking about the over here. I mean, this is still 2 offenses that are averaging over 30 points over the last 3 weeks. I get that these are both the toughest defensive matchups they've seen in that span on both sides of the ball. And like Gary said, these are 2 very slow-paced teams, so that comes into a factor too as well. But, you know, we just got 2 very good offenses as well. I mean, they're both play to their strengths of the other team here, but I do like the over here for how far it's come down.
Well, Alvin Kamara's price is down to 7K. Gary, and people saying, you know, not a great spot for him up against the San Fran defense, but is he worth it just because of that discount?
Look, I can hear the argument, and it makes a lot of sense. He's the cheapest he's been in some time. He's going to be a variance play anytime you can get Alvin Kamara at like 2% ownership. You should probably look into trying to do that. But at the same time, the tiers at running back this week are so stars and scrubs oriented that I think there's a whole tier of 6K running backs that are just going to go undervalued. And if variance is your biggest play or reason for playing a guy like Kamara, just play Aaron Jones or Melvin Gordon. Like, I don't think Melvin Gordon's going to be up at more than 8 or 9% on this slate. He's got a fantastic matchup. Like, if Melvin Gordon had played Jacksonville last week, he'd be 35% owned. So I would just play around with the other guys at 6K than going with Kamara.
Steve, you staying away from him in this spot?
I mean, they're daring you to play him at such a low salary for him here. I mean, we never get this type of discount on Kamara. But the thing that worries me is that he's just not being used a lot on the ground. He's kind of getting more usage in the passing game, and now he's facing a defense that's allowed the least amount of receiving yards to opposing running backs. They're averaging about 25 per game against the 49ers. Now, granted, Kamara's a different animal here. He's getting over double-digit targets in the past 3 weeks, but I'm just not crazy about him even at this price point here. Like Gary said, there is so many good options in the mid-tier price range that we can consider. Even James White at 5,500 against one of the worst run defenses in the league with the Chiefs feels like a lot more enticing than Kamara does here. I get it if you're playing him in big tournaments, but he's not even a cash game sniff for me.
All right, what are we thinking, Jeff?
I'm kind of surprised to hear both these guys are completely out. It's just such a cheap price for a player who's basically got like a 4 reception floor kind of thing and might even, has easily approached, double-digit targets in a couple spots. I just feel like with the price discount, the usage isn't as good maybe as we've seen it in the past, but it's still pretty much there for a PPR back. I know the matchup isn't the greatest, but you're getting such a big discount. I think he is a pretty good cash game play. The one thing I'll say against him is I think he is actually going to be kind of popular. So I'm kind of torn. I do actually like Kamara more than these guys do.
Cleveland is a 7-point favorite against Cincinnati, division rivals. Who covers, Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Browns in this one here. The biggest thing for me is that the Bengals secondary seems like it's really getting exposed as of late. Like BW Ed cornerback, allowing an average of 19 yards per receptions right now. Now he's going to be seeing guys like Odell Beckham, who I know is hurt and such. But there's just so many ways that the Browns can beat the Bengals here, especially on the ground too. Nick Chubb's in line for a really good matchup here. I don't see how the Bengals will be able to cover in this spot, so I'm definitely siding with the Browns in this game.
Jeff?
I'm going to go with the Bengals. Bengals defense played a little bit better. They've gotten 7 sacks over the last 2 games. It's a season high for them over that same span. Dalton's back at QB, and I just feel like the Browns' season was kind of last week, and now they got Beckham and Mayfield banged up. And it's bad weather, Steve. So I don't
good.
Good. I think you can see.
Yeah,
I can see a real slow-paced run game, and I think that favors the Bengals taking the points here.
Great.
Ooh, Steve, sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. A bit, that's going to change my projections.
Gary, I don't know if you've heard about the weather there, man, but who do you think covers after you have heard about Mother Nature?
I mean, I don't even know how I can continue to talk after this devastating weather news, but I'm gonna side with Jeff here. This is just a really big spread for the Browns. I don't know if Mayfield's 100%. Freddie Kitchens says the hand's 100%. I don't know if I believe Freddie Kitchens. And at the same time, Cincinnati 8-2 ATS their past 10 games as road underdogs. 8-2 ATS their past 10 games on the road. Period. They've just been pretty good at covering. Darqueze Dennard has come back the last 4 weeks and helped that secondary be a little bit, at least trending towards league average. I'm going to take the Bengals.
I knew Garion was team weather the whole time.
Team weather.
Great team to be on.
Hashtag T-Dub, dog. T-Dub.
All right, Gary and Odell Beckham Jr. has had probably the most frustrating season of his career, but he's 6,300 today. Are you taking a chance on OBJ?
There's an argument in a GPP you could use OBJ. His schedule for a wide receiver has been absolutely brutal. And the 2 times he's actually exceeded 20 DraftKings points are 2 of the games you would have expected him to do so. It was the Jets in week 2 and the Dolphins 2 weeks ago. So he has taken advantage of these good opportunities. You don't have to play him. Even in GPPs, I would keep the ownership relatively low, but I don't mind having a share or 2.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, this is the second lowest salary that we've seen him all season long here. I mentioned Webb for the Bengals, how poor he's been in coverage. He's going to see a little bit of him this week as well. So it's a GPP play by far. I think the injury news is going to scare off a lot of people. Not that he was going to carry high ownership to begin with, but that certainly helps to bring it down a bit. So in these big field tournaments, we all know what Beckham can do. We really haven't seen him do it all season long, except for that game against the Dolphins. But I think there's still a lot of upside for him, even when he's injured and whatnot. So I think it's worth it in tournaments to take a look at him.
Jeff, 6,300 for OBJ. Taking a chance?
Oh, no. I'll just stay away from this spot. It just really has not worked all year. It's like I said, it is actually going to be windy today out there, and the Bengals have played a little bit better. I just feel like there's other high-end wide receivers, high-upside wide receivers in that range. Galladay I like a little bit better. Ridley that you can go up to. No, I'm out on Odell this week.
Well, 58% of our viewers think he's going to score between 10 and 19 fantasy points.
All right, so
Just saying.
no one really concerned about the sports hernia he reportedly has been dealing
not
with.
concerned.
Thanks, guys. We're going to make our way through the rest of the 1 o'clock games coming up right after Jessie. You're going to kind of give us an inside look at what's going down at DK Sportsbooks around the country.
I am.
You are.
We are ready for the fourth quarter of the NFL's regular season. We're still going strong. Adam Kaufman, Adam Levitan, and this is Levitan's Leverage. Levy, I know you don't like Thanksgiving. I don't quite understand why, but I know you don't. Still, we're thankful for your picks because Ezekiel Elliott, Anthony Miller, and Russell Gage, they all performed well on the holiday slate last week. Now, just don't go cold in December, all right?
All right, I'll try.
All right, let's see what you got. We'll start with Alvin Kamara, 7K Sunday, home against the Niners. San Francisco's defense is solid, but not against running backs, so that's important here. Is that why you're expecting a bounce back from the Saints back?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going to shy away from Alvin Kamara just because of the matchup. I think the way that the 49ers play defense is they force you to throw short. And really, that's what makes Alvin Kamara so valuable on DraftKings. When you're racking up 9, 10, 11 very short targets with a really high catch rate, you start to get a lot of points piled up and you have upside for a lot more. Alvin Kamara has only scored a touchdown in one game all year. I think there's some regression there. So I'm not shying away from the matchup maybe as much as other people, particularly since DraftKings lowered his price to $7,000.
Yeah, to that point, Kamara has not scored since week 3, but Devontae Adams, 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. He is the third most expensive receiver on the slate at $8K. His Packers home to host the lowly Redskins. Adams is averaging about 22 fantasy points his last 3 games. He's playing really well. It's part of the reason why, unlike Kamara, his salary has jumped $1,000. Doesn't scare you off, though?
Yeah, jumped $1,000, but still underpriced, I think, particularly for this matchup against the Redskins. And some people might have sticker shock on Devontae Adams. I think you can pencil in 10, 11 targets easily. And for someone with his talent against this secondary, that's just a total print fest. I mean, Devontae Adams is fully healthy off of his toe, is the clear red zone option for Aaron Rodgers in a game where I think the Packers have a chance to score the most touchdowns on the slate. So, yeah, I think I would go Adams slightly over Michael Thomas on this slate.
Last one I find pretty interesting here, a guy who has been disappointing fantasy users most of the season. That's Odell Beckham Jr. That's why you can get the Browns wide out really on the cheap at home, 6,300 versus the Bengals. OBJ, he has a groin issue. His QB, Baker Mayfield, a hand injury. Why even go near this?
Yeah, well, maybe my priors are too strong on Odell Beckham. He's certainly had a rough year, been outplayed by Jarvis Landry. However, in good matchups like we've seen him take advantage of recently, I mean, he had a good game against the Dolphins, and I think this is a very good matchup for him against the Bengals. In these kind of good matchups, I think they have chances to get Odell Beckham going. We have a little bit of a squeaky wheel narrative, and just his talent versus what's going on in the Bengals secondary talent, I think is just too much to overcome. But really, it's just a price thing. I mean, 6,300 for a number one receiver, seeing his kind of usage at his talent level, I think is just too cheap.
If not now, when for OBJ? Adam Levitan, thank you, sir.
All right, good luck.
Welcome back to The Sweat, where we're hitting the books, a.k.a. giving you an inside look at what's going on at DK Sportsbooks across the country. Here to help, we got Hal Tendler, Sportsbook Manager at Resorts Atlantic City, Nicole Beauvert, Del Lago Sportsbook Manager, and Andy Crone, Sportsbook Supervisor at Wild Rose Resorts in Iowa. So, Nicole, we're going to start with you. You're in upstate New York, as we know, so you'd expect a lot of interest in the Bills, but what other teams are pulling in action today at your book?
Yeah, like you said, we're definitely seeing a lot of action on the Bills. But besides that, we're seeing money come in on the 10-2 showdown with the Niners versus the Saints. The Niners are actually 4-0 against the spread as underdogs. So we're seeing money on the Niners with the points.
Nicole, what's the largest bet that you've seen today?
The biggest bet we saw today was a $10,000 four-teamer that's going to pay out $122,000. It includes Arizona, the Chargers, Detroit, and Tennessee, all with the points.
Hal, what's going on in AC today? Which team are you seeing the most action on?
All right, so we have one guy that put a big bet on Cleveland -7. He put up $45,000 to win 40, and he put up $41,000 on Tampa Bay, also to win $40,000.
Hal, have you seen any major parlays today?
Same guy. Good question. 3 parlays. He has Cleveland and the under, Washington and the over, Minnesota and the under. So he went against the correlations. He takes the favorites with the under and the underdogs with the over. All $9,000 parlays, all to win $30,000 each.
Andy, which teams have drawn the most interest in Iowa today?
This morning, most of our bets have come in on Green Bay, cover that 13.5 against Washington, sorry. And then with Minnesota Vikings, started out at 13, now it's down to 11.5.
Andy, is today's action reflective of most weeks? I mean, obviously no pro team in Iowa, so interested to hear who usually garners the most interest on an NFL Sunday.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of NFC North country. I mean, all 4 teams in the NFC North are within 6 hours of here, with Vikings being closest. It's a 2-hour drive to U.S. Bank Stadium. So most of our betting does come on the NFC North side.
Hal, Nicole, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to continue making our way through the 1 o'clock games right after we get Mike Francesa's take on the main slate.
I love this matchup on Sunday. I'm sure you do too. And that's the Ravens at the Bills, because both teams riding winning streaks. It's 8 for Baltimore, 3 for Buffalo, and both in their own way really trying to sink the Patriots as well. Which one is going to avoid a setback?
Well, I think we have 3 really good units. We're 1 unit short, and that's the Bills offense. The other 3 units are all top. Buffalo's defense, their secondary, Ravens defense, and obviously the Raven offense. So the difference is the Buffalo offense doesn't belong in that foursome. So I think that's the difference in the game. Their defense, though, is going to, especially if the weather plays it, like you get a good windy day, the weather's that defense will really put a good challenge on the Raven offense. It'll be good. It'll be a good matchup. Really good matchup. So one thing about the Bills, they're much better against the pass than they are the run. That's the one thing. So Baltimore's going to run on them. Baltimore's going to win that game.
South leading Texans are going to host the Broncos. Houston's won its last 2. 9-point favorite on the DK Sportsbook as well. Denver awful on the road. I think just the 1 win at this point. So would you lay the points here?
No, we're not. They're a bad favorite. They're a good underdog. They're a bad favorite. They're not a margin team. They don't beat people by margins. I think the game will be close.
Bengals have not won on the road yet. Heck, they've only won once all year. That was last time out against the Jets. The Browns, they're banged up. Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., list really goes on from there. Will Cleveland avoid an upset here?
I think they will, but I'd be careful because with Dalton, he definitely infused. Dalton and Fitz in Miami have infused a little life into the teams. There's no question. So be careful. Bengals played well against the Jets, really well. They pushed the Jets all over the field. So this game could definitely be close, but I think the Browns just have too much firepower.
It's a narrative street between the Dolphins and Jets because the guy you just mentioned, Miami got some Fitz magic against Philadelphia. New York used to love those tricks. Not anymore. Will Ryan Fitzpatrick take down his old team to continue this kind of bizarre Finn season?
Definitely could. I think it's a close game. I think, listen, if they can beat the Eagles from 2 touchdowns back, they can beat the Jets. So I think, yes, the game is going to be close. Jets are banged up. No Adams this week, so they're hurting without him on the defense. Fitz is playing the best ball of his career right now. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a very close game.
Colts at the Buccaneers, 2 teams that are heading in opposite directions these last couple weeks. Who do you like?
Bucs are playing much better now. You're seeing Bruce Arians making his difference now. It took him a while to get them to hit a stride. He's finally getting through to Winston a little bit. I think the Bucs are playing really well right now. I think the Bucs win.
All right, the Lions have a 5-game skid, almost no prayer going into Minnesota. Vikings perfect at home, 12.5-point favorites. That's enormous. You expect them to cover?
Yes, big win. I think they'll take out their. They're upset, obviously. They'll take out their anger on the Lions. This will be an ugly game, no question. And Patricia's got to watch it. They've lost 8 out of 9 now.
Yep.
And I think he's been a victim, obviously. When you lose a quarterback and have the injuries he's had, I think early on in the season they looked like they were an improved team. Mm-hmm. I would actually give him another year, but he's also got a real thorny personality. He doesn't make a lot of friends. So he might have ticked off enough people where he's out of there. But I think they're smart. Coach-wise, he should get another year. Personality-wise, he might not get another.
Okay, on to our second segment of discussing the early games on tap. DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Greg Ehrenberg. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Please listen to Jessie, who has our first question.
I do. Carolina at Atlanta in a division matchup. First game for the Panthers without Ron Rivera, and the Falcons are 3.5-point home favorites. Who comes out on top here, Greg?
Yeah, so this is really tough for me because I don't really love these games where it's kind of towards the end of the season. Neither team really has a lot to play for. Obviously, the Panthers just made a coaching change. So I'm going to take the Panthers and the points with very little confidence. When these teams have so little motivation, it's really hard to bet on it confidently.
Steve, any confidence in your choice?
Yeah, there is no way I'm taking a Falcons team that's going to be favored. They're 4-8 against the spread overall, 0-3 when they're favored this year, and when they've been favored, they've lost by a margin of almost 10 points. I will absolutely take the Panthers in this spot. There is no way you're going to be able to get me to bet on a Falcons favored team.
So, Steve, an extremely in-depth follow-up question here. Over or under 48 points?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the over in this one here. Like, there's no chance that the Panthers only score 3 points in this game like they did in Week 11 against the Falcons here. Both teams are pretty loaded up on offense. We're seeing Julio Jones is active, Austin Hooper is active, Devonta Freeman is active. Then you got DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey on both sides. Like, I think that game was just such an anomaly what we saw in Week 11 here. Should be a lot more points scored in this game. That little spurt of defensive goodness that we saw from the Falcons quickly dissipated over the past 2 weeks. So I think it's going to be a lot of points in this one, so I'm taking the over.
Greg, after what Carolina did last week, do you lean towards the under?
No, I like the over here with Steve also. And I think the other thing we have to look at here, which this is pretty obvious, this isn't some sort of contrarian pick or anything like that. But if I was the new coach of the Panthers, I would just say I'm going to give the ball to Christian McCaffrey almost every single play. That kind of seems like the easiest route to success. So I think that McCaffrey is going to be really, really highly involved this week and definitely have a much better fantasy game than he did last week.
Fun fact for you guys. Over the last 4 seasons, an opposing fantasy player has recorded a top 10 fantasy performance when playing a team that made a head coaching change the week prior. Did you follow? Could Devonta Freeman, he's 5,400, be the beneficiary of that stat this weekend, Greg?
Well, who did the research on that one?
It was me.
That is quite
Yeah.
How dare you?
So I don't really put too much weight into that stat. And here's the issue that I have with Devonta Freeman. He's had a lot of snaps this year. He's had a lot of touches. He's been involved in the passing game, but just doesn't do all that much. Like, he hasn't been a high upside fantasy player despite having a pretty big role, even though he's playing over 65% of the snaps for the Falcons this year. So for that reason, it's hard for me to trust him at all. If there is one Falcon who's going to have a big game, I think we just have to say Julio Jones because he is the biggest high upside player on the team, and maybe he actually scores a touchdown this week also.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, teams have been able to run against the Panthers. Like, it's been almost like laughable how much they've been able to do so. 7 teams over 100 rushing yards, 2 teams over 200 rushing yards. But like Greg said, it's not like Devonta Freeman has been someone who's been exactly efficient when he's on the field. He's averaging about 3.4 yards per carry. I don't think he's had one over 4 in over 5 straight games now. I mean, I get the price tag is very enticing. The matchup is one you definitely want to target against, but the expectations cannot be high for Freeman for just really hasn't been able to do it all season long.
So we asked everyone on Facebook who will have a better fantasy day, Devonta Freeman or Julio Jones, and it's 50-50 split right now.
That's too bad.
Okay, just don't kill the messengers.
Be nice, Steve. Be nice. We need them.
I'm always confused by those questions though, because it's like the guys are in 2 entirely different price ranges. They play different positions. It's like, what are we expecting? So,
it's just overall. It's overall, Greg. It's about interaction. Get with it. Doesn't mean they're right.
I know, but how do people even know what question they're supposed to be?
Greg, be quiet!
Greg,
be quiet, Greg.
Greg, you are killing the show.
Facebook, we love these questions.
You are killing the show.
They're great.
Next on the menu, Redskins, Packers, Green Bay favored by 13.5. Is this one destined to be a blowout, Steve?
Yeah, I think this one is here. I think Washington's going to struggle to get the stuff going through the air here. Like, they'll definitely get some production on the ground. The Packers have not been a strong team against the run. You know, you look at Adrian Peterson, Darius Geis is active in this game here, so they definitely could have some good production on the ground. But I think the Packers will just blow them out here. I don't see a chance here where the Redskins are able to stay competitive.
Greg, Washington hasn't won in Green Bay since 1988. I just want you to know that.
Wow.
Well, they haven't won much of anywhere. They haven't won in Washington many games since 1988 either. That's kind of a trend.
That's fair.
That is fair.
I think this game's probably going to be a blowout. The Redskins are going to have trouble scoring. I know we're going to talk about the over next. The only real concern I have is there going to be a backdoor cover here? Because there could be a spot where the Packers just get up really big early and they just kind of grind out the clock, and then the Redskins score like a touchdown or two against a prevent defense in garbage time.
Okay, so over under, like you just alluded to, Greg, 41.5 points. Are you going to go under?
So I'm going to take the over just because I think the Packers could hit this number just by themselves. Yeah. And the other thing also is if they do happen to get up really big, we know the Redskins are going to want to keep throwing the ball. They're going to want to try to get Haskins reps towards the end of the game in a blowout situation. The Packers could be playing a prevent there. So I think that if the Redskins score, it probably is pretty likely towards the end of the game in garbage time when the Packers already run up the score.
Okay, Steve, so you going to take the over here?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well here because, kind of like what Greg said, like we could easily put Green Bay up for 30-plus points in this game. So if the Redskins have to make up the difference, we're talking about, 12, 13 points here, I definitely think that's obtainable because, once again, like I'm saying, there's definitely an opportunity for them to get some scores on the ground against this poor Green Bay run defense. So it's just too low of a total for a Green Bay team that we've seen pick apart poor secondaries in the past. We just saw it against the Giants. We saw it against the Eagles. We saw it against the Lions. We saw it against the Raiders. There's been a lot of times where Aaron Rodgers has done extremely well in these types of matchups here, so I just think it's too low. I'm going the over.
The weather's really good in Green Bay too, Steve. I just wanted to.
Whoa!
What?
Who is that?
Where is this coming from?
Who's talking?
First of all, you can't unmute yourself, so don't do that again, and don't interrupt my segment. Who are you? That was stupid, Jeff.
It's
eavesdropping on our segment.
Jeff gets God mic status?
Yeah.
He just jumps in and talks over everybody with the God mic. Do we get muted automatically also when Jeff talks?
Yeah,
Jeff, what is that? What does your mug say? I couldn't see it the first time.
This is from an Iron Man that my wife completed.
Oh.
I like to take credit. Yeah.
Okay.
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
Jeff
yeah,
Rocks.
you do.
All right, get off.
Okay, Jeff, please mute yourself again.
Yeah, this is not your segment.
Darius guys had Steven, relax.
Calm down.
Darius guys had over 30 fantasy points last week. Green Bay, maybe an okay defense, but it's a top 10 rush defense. Would you use Geis again this week, Steve?
I don't mind using him here. I mean, this is somebody who only went up $400 in salary after scoring 30-plus DraftKings fantasy points against the Panthers. Now, when Dwayne Haskins is under center, they like throwing the ball more in the red zone than they do like to run it here. But I just think this is a really good spot for Geis. I mean, we've kept saying here how poor the Green Bay run defense has been. Obviously, if they're getting blown out here, that doesn't help him in the game script sense here. But at least in the beginning of the game, I think Geis should get some good carries to start with in the game. So I don't mind using him. He's still too cheap for the matchup that he's in.
Do you mind using him, Greg?
Yeah, I do, and here's the reason why. The game script is just awful for Geis, because we think that this game's probably going to be a blowout. He's not super involved in the pass game. So what's going to happen here? The Packers are going to go up like 14 points or so almost immediately, and then the Redskins are just going to stop running the ball for the rest of the game.
What do you think, Jeff? No, don't come on.
Don't
No.
answer that. All right.
We're going to hear about what his wife did last week.
Okay, Dolphins at Jets. New York is a 5-point favorite. Is that too high? The way the Dolphins have been playing, 3 wins in their last 5
Who would have
games.
thought?
Greg.
Maybe it's a little bit too high just because I do think this is probably going to be a pretty competitive game. It's a pretty good game to stack for DFS just because these defenses are so bad on both sides. But still, this is a game it's hard to have confidence in the Dolphins. It's hard to have confidence in the Jets, but give me the points.
Steve, what do you think?
I think it is a little too high here. The Jets are 0-3 against the spread when favored so far this season, 5-7 overall. The Dolphins have been creeping up. They're 6-6 against the spread so far this year, and you just have to like what you've been seeing from Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker. I think there's a lot to like in this game here, so I kind of like the Dolphins at +5 instead.
Okay, next one. Over/under 46.5 points. Bukes?
Yeah, this is definitely an over for me. Kind of like what Greg was saying. 2 really poor defenses on both sides of the ball. They should be able to run against each other. They should be able to throw against each other here. Like, it wouldn't be a surprise to have this game over 50-something points. And we'll talk about this total later. That's what they call a tease. We'll talk about that total later in the show.
Oh, love it. Gregory?
Yeah, I think this one's an over also. Steve and I are agreeing a lot today. So I think that here's what's going to happen. The defenses are bad. The offenses are bad also. But there's just going to be a lot of short passes completed. There's going to be a lot of PPR points in this game. Patrick Laird might score a touchdown, and Twitter will blow up and go nuts again. So that could be a thing. And then Bilal Powell also is arguably the best DFS value on the slate, assuming that he's starting in place of Le'Veon Bell today.
All right, guys, does Fitzmagic, he'll cost you $6,000, continue to roll? He's had at least 25-plus fantasy points in his last 2 starts. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he does. I think that him throwing the ball to Parker makes a whole lot of sense as a DFS stack. Parker's been really good lately, especially ever since Fitzpatrick came back and took over at quarterback. He's been looking for Parker a lot in the passing game.
Steve, tell me.
I mean, look, you don't feel great about playing Fitzmagic at 6,000, but this is somebody who against a very poor Eagles secondary just went out for 27 of 39 passes, 365 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The Jets secondary will not give much resistance to him either here. So, yeah, I like him a lot this week.
Got more people leaning under here. 67% of our audience believes Fitzpatrick will go under 25 points.
That's too bad.
And that's an easy question to answer because there's a very clear directive. We know a certain number of fantasy points. That question makes sense to me.
Why don't you read the directive?
Good. How about some other questions that could possibly make sense to you, Greg? Let's go to Facebook. Angelo wants to know, Greg, I'll have you answer this one. Hooper or Andrews?
So I'm going to go with Hooper. He was really good before he got hurt. And I always have this concern with Andrews, just he doesn't play all that many snaps.
Yeah.
So just because of Hooper, it's so much safer a play to me.
Steve, DJ Moore or Odell?
I'm going to go DJ Moore here. You know, Odell has definitely been a shaky option all season long. He's got a very good matchup against the Bengals. There's no doubt about that. The sports hernia thing is a little bit concerning, but love the matchup for DJ Moore.
Okay, Gregory, Jameis Winston or Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, if you're looking for upside, the answer is always going to be Winston. But if you're looking for floor, the answer is never Winston. So I'd say for a cash game, you probably go towards Garoppolo if it's a GPP Winston.
Steve, Devin Singletary or Kenny Golladay?
I'm going to go Golladay. I love that matchup against the Vikings. I think that's going to be one of the ones that ends up being a shootout this week. So I definitely like Golladay in this game.
Greg, Sam Harris on Facebook says, calm down. And then we have a question for you to answer. Mohamed Sanu or Sony Michel?
I'm going to go with Sanu. I know he hasn't been all that healthy for the Patriots lately and hasn't played a whole much of a role in the passing game. But still, Michel isn't all that great either. I think it's going to be a really high-scoring game between the Chiefs and the Patriots. The Patriots are probably going to have to throw to keep up with the Chiefs. So for that reason, I think that Sanu, just getting the PPR points, he should be decent this week.
All right, guys, we're going to round out our previews of the early slate of games coming up, but a friendly reminder, and you're all doing great, to keep sending your questions our way on YouTube, on Facebook. If anyone still uses Twitter, feel free to send them our way on that platform as well. We will do our best to answer as many as we can. And keep an eye out on Facebook as we've been asking you questions, having you vote in polls, questions that Greg really loves. Here's Adam Levitan, though, for now, talking 49ers and Saints.
We talk about what defenses do, what they allow, and what they funnel you into doing, right? So, like, San Francisco's allowed, or has forced, let's not say allowed, they've forced a league-high 30.9% of pass attempts to be behind the line of scrimmage, negative air yard throws. No other team's above, like, 26.5%. So, like, they force you to throw the ball short. In his career, Kamara's caught 90.5% of those type of targets. So at least if he gets the 9 or 10 targets that he's been seeing a lot recently, we're going to get very easily convertible catches, which gives him a really high floor, even though it's a really tough matchup. And we've kind of made some bacon the last few weeks playing pass-catching running backs like Kamara and like Leonard Fournette last week in the Millie Maker, where Fournette last week was like under 8% owned because of the tough matchup. People just fade the running back against the bad running back matchup. They see that red number, the public sees that red number, and they just avoid. Well, you can make some money there because these are game flow independent running backs. If they're losing, they're going to get the ball thrown to them a ton, and they have a really high floor. And if they happen to do something against that team, and we saw it with Alvin Kamara the first time they played the Buccaneers when he saw a price drop and caught like 9 or 10 balls against them that first game as well. So I think the floor is actually elevated for someone like Kamara, and his price has been dropped because of the matchup, which is what DraftKings does. They price teams or price players up when they're in really good matchups, like Vance McDonald this week, and they price players down when they're in really tough matchups to try and dare you to pick that player. I think the Kamara is a really good play this week, even though San Francisco is an extremely legit defense, taking absolutely nothing away from them.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I've been burned by this guy. I always want to play him. It scored 2 touchdowns this year, both against Seattle, so it's just been ugly in terms of touchdowns. But
no inside the 5 carries. They don't give
the volume's there though, and he's really involved in the passing game. So I'll make another bet on talent. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate, but I get the concerns, and man, I've been wrong about him all year, just hoping for one of those long touchdowns.
Okay, back here on the sweat, we wish Jessie Coffield nothing but the best, but we do have a couple other analysts here. Julian Edlow, Jeff Ulrich, they are both here. We are going to be looking at the rest of the 1 o'clock games. Lions at the Vikings with Minnesota favored by 12.5. So it looks like David Blau is going to give it a go. Looked okay on Thanksgiving, but is this too much for him to ask to actually help the Lions cover here, Jules?
It's not too much to ask since it's such a big number here, and we've seen Minnesota let up points all season. I would lean Vikings here just because I think they've been playing really strong lately. We saw them score a lot of points in Seattle, and they really need this win. So I think they're going to want to get themselves that cushion against Detroit in order to get this win and stay in the division conversation with the Packers here. In terms of Blau, I think that he can have a fine game from a DFS perspective as a value, but he's not going to be the player that we saw last week. That was a little bit fluky.
Jeff, who covers?
I think Detroit's going to cover. I mean, I just think there's too many ways that Detroit can come back in this game and get a backdoor cover. I think Blau's fine, too. I mean, the Detroit Lions were covering and staying competitive with Jeff Driscoll. I don't really see that big a difference here. And the one thing I do think that Detroit can take advantage of is the Minnesota Vikings secondary is really not good. I mean, they got Golladay and Marvin Jones. Jones went for 4 touchdowns against this team a few weeks ago. I mean, this is a situation. It's a pretty good spot for the Detroit offense. So if Blau plays even just like mediocre, they're probably going to put up some yards. And again, it's 12.5 points. It's a lot. I definitely like the Lions in this spot.
Jules, over or under 43.5 points?
I do like the over here a lot. Like I said, Minnesota's offense is playing well. It's going up against a weak Detroit defense, both really against the pass and the run. So we're going to see Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook have it going, I think, in this game. We saw this really shoot out last time. I think it was 42-30. And then, like Jeff said, he likes the Lions to cover. He thinks David Blau can be solid. If they can just put up enough points to keep this one, even if they don't cover a 14-point game or so, I think this one can really find its way over.
Jeff, do you agree?
Yeah, this is, again, there's a couple totals here that I really like the over this week, and this is definitely one of them. The only really thing that worries me a little bit is actually from Minnesota. They might just try and kill the ball without Adam Thielen again and a banged-up Dalvin Cook. But, you know, I really do feel like Detroit's going to be able to move the ball a little bit like last week against with long downfield throws against with Golladay, like they did against the Bears. And I really feel like if Detroit can get to, like, even 15 points, there's a really good shot at the overhead. So, yeah, give me the over.
Jeff, you just mentioned a banged up Dalvin Cook. He's $9,500. So you thinking he's not going to be too chalky?
I think he actually is trending towards being like one of the higher-owned running backs on the slate. I don't really like it personally. They have a really capable backup who they were already giving 10 carries, 10 touches to every week when Cook was healthy. If this game does get a little bit out of hand, you're going to see more Madison. Like I'm not even unsure of that statement. I'm very confident that the Vikings will roll with Madison in the second half if they feel comfortable. And there's a very legit shot that that'll happen because of the big spread here. So I think Dalvin Cook carries a lot of risk. I know the matchup's good. I don't even think his ownership is going to be that suppressed. So to me, like, you got Fournette at 7,800, you got Kamara at 7,000. I think Dalvin Cook's too risky to play today.
Julian, 60% of our Facebook audience will play Dalvin Cook today. Are you going to at $9,500?
Probably not. It does surprise me a little bit how expensive Cook is and that he is coming off getting banged up last week and that people want to play him that much. I think there's a lot of good running backs. We have Christian McCaffrey, who people are always going to pay for up there. And then we have, like Jeff said, Leonard Fournette. We have Derrick Henry. We've got a cheap Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon even. There's guys to pay for. So I would think Dalvin Cook would be a little bit lower owned this week. And then I would maybe, if I'm making multiple lineups, sneak him into a couple GPPs in case people like Jeff are wrong and Cook does wind up just being the guy that takes 25 carries in this game. But if people are going to be all over him at 9,500 in this spot, banged up, I'll play the other running backs because I think there's some really good plays on the board.
Drew Lock looked good in his debut for Denver last week. They will now travel to Houston. Can he help the Broncos cover the 9-point spread? Are they going to get it done, Jules?
He can help the Broncos cover the 9-point spread because he looks like the closest thing that the Broncos have had to a real quarterback all season. The issue is can he keep up with Deshaun Watson and Houston's offense, which just looked great against the Patriots defense. And Houston's defense even looked spectacular against the Patriots, even though that offense is probably overrated for New England. They look terrific. So if they can do it against Tom Brady, they can probably do it against Drew Lock. This spread is coming down. It's getting closer and closer to a touchdown. The money's coming in on the Broncos. If it's at 7, I would feel really safe going with Houston. But anything more than a touchdown, I think a slight lean to Denver here.
You feel safe with this one, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I mean, I think people may be overestimating Drew Lock a little bit. This is a bit of a tougher matchup. I mean, the Chargers was kind of a dead fish last week. At the same time, it's a lot of points to give to Denver. It's a team who's been actually like a really good cover team over the last 8 games. I mean, they've had a couple like busts in there, but I think they're 6-8 now. So against the spread over the last 8 games, I mean, they've just been a solid team at keeping games close, not finishing games and winning them, but covering. And again, they have a good defense. I'd lean the points here too. It's not my favorite spot of the week because Houston's offense could definitely get off, but I'd lean Denver here for sure with that many points.
So would you lean over 43 points, Jeff, with Denver trying to keep up to Houston?
Again, I don't like that. This isn't one of my favorite totals. I don't like betting overs with Denver because there's such a good chance their offense busts. And we've seen Houston kind of just play not that good and be a little bit inefficient, and they are coming off a big primetime game. So if I was going to lean here, I would probably actually lean towards the under. Denver's defense is legit. They're good at holding teams, even if when their offense doesn't play well, to 24 or less points. I'd lean under here.
What do you think, Jules?
I'm with Jeff in the sense that I'm probably not going to be betting this one, but my lean would actually go to the over side, and that just kind of shows how close this total is. It's a dicey one that you may not want to touch. I trust Houston's offense at home in this spot. I think is the difference between me and Jeff here. I think that they can find their way to 28, 31 points, and I think we both think that Denver's going to do their part and keep this one at least close, even if they don't cover. So, if we get something here in the range of 28 to 14, you're starting to get close there. You can get a backdoor over here. I would lean to the over. I don't feel great about it.
Do you feel great about DeAndre Hopkins, $7,400 on DraftKings? That ties his season low salary, Jules.
Yeah, I think that he's a solid tournament play. You probably don't want him in cash. But you look like we have some cheap receivers here. We have Michael Thomas coming all the way down to 8,300. Julio Jones is in that same ballpark against a Carolina team that he's had some of his career games against. He had a 250-yard game against Carolina in the past. So I think it's a good week to get cheaper stud receivers. And I think with Will Fuller out, that means Kenny Stills is going to be a popular value, but that means only more deep looks for both Stills and Hopkins. I think he's a safe tournament play at 7,400.
Is he in a good spot, Jeff?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, look, Denver still has Chris Harris back there. They still have a solid pass rush. I just feel like the pace of play in this game isn't going to be that high. You're looking at the $7,400 range. I'd much rather take a shot that Julio Jones comes up for a big game or just go down. I mean, I mentioned Golladay as a real low-owned flyer in GBPs, but I mean, Mike Evans is in a good bounce-back spot too, and he's not really getting like a ton of steam this week. I mean, Kenny Moore is out in the Indianapolis secondary. There's just plays I like better here than Hopkins. Look, Hopkins can go off against anyone, but the game flow, the matchup, it just suggests a slower day for DeAndre Hopkins.
Jeff, Indy is a 3.5-point underdog in Tampa Bay. Can they win outright against the Bucs?
I mean, they can. It's the Bucs, but I actually like Tampa in this spot. Here's an interesting stat. Teams going up against Derrick Henry the week before, who allowed over 100 yards to Derrick Henry. They're 1-6 against the spread the next week. And again, I talked about this earlier in the show. It's like that. They're facing a tough team the week before they get banged up. When you're tackling Derrick Henry and he just goes off against you, it's hard to get up for the game next week after the big guy rolled against you. So I think this is a letdown spot. I really have not liked the Indy offense without T.Y. Hilton. And I mentioned Kenny Moore being out. It's a really good spot for the Tampa Bay wide receivers. I don't trust Tampa very often when I'm betting, but I'm going to trust them here to get it done.
Who do you trust in this game, Julian?
Nobody. And that's why I probably won't bet on it. But like Jeff said, there's a little bit more pointing in Tampa's direction in this game. And if Eric Ebron and T.Y. Hilton and some of those guys were healthy, I would feel much better about betting Indy on the road here. But at the same time, Indy's got a solid defense. I'm really nervous about Jameis Winston turnovers. So for me, it's going to be can the upside of Tampa, Jameis Winston, and those two great receivers overcome the mistakes that are almost inevitably going to be made? And I think that they can. I think that they're going to be good enough to do that. So I'll trust Tampa. Or like I said, I won't trust anyone, but I will lean to Tampa at home here if you made me play this game.
Okay, Jules, I say total of 47. You say?
I say, again, nothing that I'm confident in, but I've got to be consistent. And on our earlier show, I said that I would lean to the under here, and I'm sticking with that. I think that Indy this is a spot that if T.Y. Hilton was fully healthy, he would be a fantastic play on this slate against Tampa's secondary, and he's not. So people are now going to try and lean on Zach Pascal and these other cheaper Indy wide receivers, and we'll see what they can do. But I don't think Indy's going to generate much offense in this spot, and all the running backs that have been so good for Indy, now they face a really good Tampa run defense. So I think this one's going to stay under. I think Jameis Winston won't have to stay pedal to the metal the whole time, which helps keep it under.
Well, 88% of our Facebook audience disagrees with you.
The Bucs are an over team.
They think it's going over. Jeff, what do you think? You on Julian's side or Facebook?
We have the sharpest viewers. Always good to disagree with Julian. I'm going over here, too. I think it's a good spot for the Tampa Bay Bucs offense. Like I said, the Colts secondary is banged up, and this isn't a team that gets a ton of interceptions. They only have 8 on the year, which is good news for Jameis Winston. Maybe won't turn the ball over too much this game, but I do think it's a good spot for Tampa. And again, like Brissett and Doyle, they can still move the ball in garbage time here. I think 47 in a Tampa Bay game. I mean, against the Bucs offense has been rolling last couple weeks. I think they keep rolling, and I think this goes over.
So you're telling me you like Jameis Winston in fantasy today, despite 11 points last week against Jacksonville?
I don't love him. I mean, he's not. I'd rather just pay up for Aaron Rodgers this week if you can get there. But again, I mean, if you like Mike Evans in the matchup here, there's not stacking him with this quarterback makes perfect sense. I think this is going to be a bit of a lower owned stack than it has been in weeks past. So for GPPs, definitely an interesting spot. And you can come back with Jack Doyle, who's probably going to perhaps approach 10 targets today.
Julian, good bounce back spot for Jameis?
Yeah, I think it's a solid spot for him. I agree with most of the points that Jeff said. Maybe I'm a little bit lower on him because I don't think there's going to be quite as many points in this game. Jack Doyle is probably my favorite fantasy target in this game. I think he's getting a little bit overlooked at tight end. He had a huge week last week. He's going to soak up so many of those targets with Ebron and Hilton out. And everybody's kind of looking at the Greg Olsen news and overreacting and going to the Carolina tight end and Thomas, whereas I think Doyle is going to be in another really good spot. He's my favorite fantasy play in this game.
Well, we have found Jessie. She is looking ahead to the Chiefs-Patriots game with 3-time Super Bowl champion Matt Chatham right now.
Chiefs coming up this weekend. Pats have been able to keep pace with this Mahomes-led offense. Historically, their last 3 matchups have gone over 60 points. But with the success this Pats defense has had this year, I mean, do you see this one maybe going a little bit differently?
It's a very good question, and I think it's one that it's really tough to predict. I mean, on points predictions, higher, above or below these things, I love those kind of wagers at this time of the year. The issue, though, with Kansas City is they've been as variable with their outcomes, I think, even as the Pats have. They've got a 13-point home loss on their record this year. They've got multiple losses there in Kansas City, which isn't relevant for this weekend, but they've been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde themselves. So if you take sort of that in its own little vacuum and say, okay, generally that's a team that is capable of 40 like they did last week against the Raiders, but they're also capable of a 20. They're capable of 17. They're even capable of occasionally a 13.
Now it's time to turn our attention to the late afternoon slate of games. We got DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Gary Thorne here to do it.
Let's start with the Patriots and Chiefs. New England, a 3-point home favorite, but look very vulnerable. Steve, can KC come into Foxborough and pull out a dub?
I think they have a legitimate chance to do so here. Like, we talk about how good the Patriots secondary has been, and rightfully so, but you look at what the Chiefs secondary has done as well. No one has allowed less receiving yards than the Chiefs, aside from the Patriots and the 49ers. Like, they very quietly have been a very tough team to throw against. Like, definitely the Patriots can run against the Chiefs. Like, that's very well known here, but I think the Chiefs have a legitimate chance to come in here into Foxborough and beat the Patriots here this week.
Okay, Garion.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Steve. I mean, you go through some of these spread numbers. The Patriots are only 1-4 ATS the past 5 times they've played a team above 500. And then the Chiefs have covered 7 of the last 10 games they've played on the road against a team above 500. So one of these two teams tends to hang a little bit tougher against top flight competition. And it's not the Patriots right now. And I think the point Steve made last is really important. I do think the Patriots will be able to run the ball against the Chiefs because anyone can run the ball against the Chiefs, but that's not the best aspect of the Patriots offense. And if you're making them do something they don't necessarily want to do, you're already kind of winning if you're the Chiefs. So I like them a lot here. I'll take the points.
Mahomes versus Brady, the total is set at 49 points. Over or under, Garion?
If you think the Patriots are going to run the ball as much as I think they're going to, and if you still have a respect for that Patriot defense, I think the under is the play here. And actually 17 of the last 23 games in which the Patriots have been favored have hit the under. So with those two factors in mind, I'll take a small under here.
Steve, you want to go under?
Yeah, I'm going to take the under on this one too. Like, it's definitely not something you like doing because of who the team names here, the Patriots and the Chiefs taking the under on the total here, but it just feels a little bit too high. I mean, aside that game against the Texans, no one has really been able to score against the Patriots, and then how I mentioned earlier about how good the Chiefs secondary has been as well. So if the Patriots are forced to run the ball, that's going to slow this game down. So, asking for around 50 points to hit the over here just feels like a lot. So I'm going to take the under on this one as well.
So then, Steve, how do we feel about Tyreek Hill, second highest priced wide receiver, $8,100? You chasing or fading him against this strong New England defense?
I love using him in tournaments, and obviously he's going to see a lot of Stephon Gilmore, but we've seen the Chiefs move him into the slot more. He played on that in the slot 44% of his snaps last week. If they continue to do so here, it's going to be a much softer matchup for Tyreek Hill. Now, obviously, the Patriots secondary has been dynamic from top to bottom here, but if we're getting you away from Stephon Gilmore, that's probably the best case scenario. Even in coverage with Gilmore, Tyreek Hill is just one of those guys that can break one off, and that's all he needs here. So he's expensive, but I think he's an excellent tournament play this week.
Well, Gary, it's 75% of our audience on Facebook fading Tyreek Hill today. Do you agree?
I mean, it's fair. I'll be honest. If I have $8,100 and one receiving slot still open, it's very hard for me not to put Davante Adams in there.
Yeah.
Considering the really difficult matchup that Tyreek Hill has. But like Steve said, there is never a week Tyreek Hill is not a good GPP play because that's just how high his ceiling is. The fact that he's still $8,100, knowing what we know knowing what we know about the Patriots really does speak to that consistency he shows with that high upside week to week. He's by far leading all receivers in fantasy points generated per route run at 0.65 per route. I'm probably going to play Adams, but look, in a tournament, I can't tell you it's a bad idea.
Next up, we got the struggling Chargers taking on the Jags. Despite their issues, the Chargers are 3-point road favorites. Gary, and do they turn it around against this Jags team?
Look, I don't trust either of these teams. I don't like betting on either of these teams. I'm probably going to stay away from this one because I'm leaning towards the Chargers just because I think Melvin Gordon is going to run all over this Jacksonville defense. I don't think there's any way they can stop Melvin Gordon, who's looked a lot better and a lot fresher the last 4 weeks. But at the same time, the Chargers have not covered their last 4 times as favorites, and they're a road favorite today. So I would probably steer clear. If you made me bet it, sure. I'll take the 3 points in the Chargers.
Steve, the battle of the 4 and 8 teams.
Yeah, what a matchup here. Emerson's looking forward to this one. Like Garion said, the Chargers are absolutely abysmal when they're favored. 1-6-1 against the spread so far this season when they're favored. Jaguars as underdogs are 3-5, so it's not like it gives you much promise either here. So this is just such a stay away game for me here. 2 bad teams against the spread. Don't even bother touching this one. If I had to choose here, I'll take the 3 points with the Jaguars.
Sounds like you would be leaning towards the under then, 42.5.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a mess here. I mean, the Chargers are just not a team you ever want to bet on for anything. The over-under, the spread, to do anything right, that's just nothing. The Chargers don't do anything right. The Chargers can never get out of their own way. It's just a bad team to bet with, so I'm definitely taking the under here.
Garion?
Yeah, no team settles for field goals quite like the Chargers. In their last 11 overall games, the under has hit 8 times. In Jacksonville's last 11 home games, the under has hit 9 times. The trends are telling you to just bet the under here.
Minshew Mania is back at 5,400. Great for social media hype, but are you staying away this week, Garion?
Yeah, I have not even considered for a nanosecond playing Gardner Minshew in any lineups. I almost even forgot he was the starting quarterback until I saw this question on the rundown, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is a thing that happened during the course of this week. Los Angeles is just a really good pass defense. If you're wanting to pay under $6,000 for a quarterback, just pay $400 more for Kyler Murray. You don't even have to think about this.
Steve, assume you're saying ditto.
No. Yeah, I'm not playing him. Forget it. Don't want him at all.
Okay, we will continue this conversation here in just a few seconds, but first we must say goodbye to our viewers at News 12 Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey, right, in Connecticut.
Yep.
Although, yes, we are leaving your televisions. We will be here on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, answering more questions to people who have not been watching us on News 12.
So go tune in to that.
Please join us.
Right now.
Okay. Now that we lost those guys.
Okay.
All right. Tennessee comes into Oakland as 3-point favorite. Steve, can Mike Vrabel's team continue to roll?
Yeah, so Tennessee Titans 3-3-1 against the spread so far this season. Win their favorite here. You couldn't get the Raiders at a more vulnerable time now. 12 points total in their last 2 games. They just have not looked well at all here. And, when you have to rely on the likes of Terrell Williams as your wide receiver 1, it's going to start being shaky at some point. And we've kind of seen that now. Hunter Renfrow being out of the mix, I think, has made a big difference. Even though he wasn't a huge impact player, I think it's something that's made a difference in this offense here. So definitely taking the Titans in this game.
Who are you taking, Garion?
I don't trust AFC South teams. I just can't do it. And I won't do it as the Titans are a favorite on the road. Look, there's not a lot to love about the Raiders. I understand that. But at the same time, they've been a much different team when they get to play at home. They're 6-1 their last 7 times as a home underdog. They are 7-2 ATS the past 9 games overall in Oakland. If you're going to give me 3 points with the Raiders at home, I'll take the Raiders.
Derek Carr is only $5,000. He hasn't looked great, we will admit, but Tennessee comes in with the 26th ranked pass D in the NFL. So could this be like a sneaky play here, Steve?
I'm not crazy about it here. I definitely get it. He's very cheap. He helps make some of the other things in your lineup fit here, but this is someone who's averaging 174 passing yards, 1 touchdown over his past 2 games. Like I just said earlier, Terrell Williams as your wide receiver 1 was going to blow up at some point. We're finally starting to see that there. Darren Waller hasn't been as effective as we saw in the beginning of the year. There's just not much to love here. And then the whole thing with Josh Jacobs, if he's going to end up being playing, if he's going to be effective when he's playing, if that means that Carr has to throw the ball more, not sure if I'm actually crazy about that. So I get it. He's very cheap here, but staying away.
Garion, what are you doing here?
Yeah, there's just no ceiling. Derek Carr really hasn't shown ceiling ever in 2019. He's got 1 game, where he's thrown for 3 touchdowns this season. He has no games where he's hit the 300-yard bonus. It's just not an offense that's conducive to him putting up the kind of numbers where you could win a GPP even at $5,000 with someone like Derek Carr. If you want to play Darren Waller, fine, but that's really about the only piece of this offense I'm looking at, unless we get definitive word that DeAndre Washington is going to start this game because Josh Jacobs is out.
Alrighty, let's go to Steelers at the Cardinals. Steelers, 2.5-point favorites on the road. Cards have lost 5 straight. So does Pittsburgh continue that streak and pull out a win in the desert? Garion.
You know what? I like Kyler Murray in this game, and I think his potential is kind of being slept on in what is obviously still a very difficult matchup. But at the end of the day, you've got a Cardinals team that just isn't very good and hasn't shown the consistency that you would want, or the confidence to bet on them that you would want. And the Steelers are just 8-2 ATS their past 10 games. I think a lot of the things the Steelers have done is a little fluky in terms of their turnover differential, but at the same time, they just get it done. So give me the Steelers.
Steven, answer the question, please.
Yeah, so I like the Steelers in this game. They have such a good pass rush here. And we look at Kyler Murray, who's been under pressure on 142 of his dropbacks, only a 43% completion rate. I feel like 90% of those came last week against the Rams, where he just did not have any chance against that team. So I'm not liking the Cardinals in this game.
All right, guys, here is the game plan for the rest of the show. Steven and Julian, we are going to get sweaty as we listen to your hot takes. I know everyone is very excited. Maybe not as much as I am.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. But first, here's a Sunday Night Showdown preview, courtesy of our friends at KFC.
It's a big game Sunday night. Todd Gurley's been all cooped up, but we'll see if he's able to spread his wings, maybe ruffle some feathers when the Seahawks visit the Rams. Some nod of approval. This is the Sunday Night Showdown series presented by KFC. Adam Kaufman, Steve Buchanan. Hawks, of course, they're trying to soar to the top of the West. The Rams just looking for a return spot to the playoffs. You see any talent you like on the field there for your Colonel's pick?
Not a bad
spot?
punt. I'll give you that.
Good, thank you.
But I like Robert Woods in this spot. Look, Cooper Kupp has been the wide receiver one for the Rams, but over the past 4 weeks, he hasn't seen more than 65 receiving yards. And then we have Robert Woods coming off a game where he made 13 catches on 19 targets. This week, he's going to draw coverage from quarterback Shaquille Griffin, who's allowing an average of 12.7 yards per reception. So really like Woods in this matchup.
Who else you plucking for your lineup?
Yeah, so we're going to run it back here with DK Metcalf from the Seahawks. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game, and Metcalf has been the safer play as of late. Tyler Lockett, only 1 catch over his last 2 games. You look at Metcalf, 9 catches on 13 targets in that same span, so I think Metcalf is one of the safer, more reliable plays in this game.
Okay, it's going to do it for the latest edition of the Sunday Night Series. KFC's beloved chicken and waffles are back. They're right in front of me. I'm salivating because now they've got kick. Enjoy Nashville hot chicken and waffles if you're feeling spicy. You feeling spicy?
Always spicy.
Okay, and scary but true of him. Or you could stick with classic chicken and waffles if you're feeling, well, not spicy. Order online or get them delivered at KFC.com.
Okay, it's that time of the show again. Time for Steven and Julian to exchange hot takes. And Jules, since you just had a child, I expect nothing but the best from you since you are even more miserable now than you were before. Steven, please take it away and Godspeed to you.
Yeah, Julian might be more cranky than usual because he has been getting sleep. He came in, he was grouchy to everybody. We're all excited to see him.
I said I slept well last night.
It doesn't look like it. I will say
it never
that.
does.
So my hot take for this one here is that the Dolphins-Jets game is going to be the highest scoring game of all the games this week here. I think there's just too much potential here. Both these teams have been scoring a ton of points as of late, way more than their season average. We look at the Dolphins averaged 27 points over their last 3 weeks. The Jets 24.7 over the last 3 weeks. You got guys like Powell and Parker who legitimately could have over at least 2 touchdowns in this game apiece here. I think there's a lot to like in this game. No good defense on either side here. So I think this game has a legitimate shot to be the highest scoring game of the slate.
What's the total on that game?
I think it's 49.
All right, so it's one that's up there, and I don't hate it. I mean, we've got a game that's projected to be one of the higher scoring games on the slate, and it's 2 offensives that have been decent. I think a lot of us like Fitzpatrick, a lot of us like Darnold today.
47.
47. All right, yeah, I'd play the over on that. I don't hate it. So I think I've got a lot of Parker in my lineups. I've got a lot of Robbie Anderson in my lineups. I like the quarterbacks. I think we all have a lot of Bilal Powell in our lineups, especially if you're playing cash games. These are 2 teams that are both much worse on the defensive side of the ball than on the offensive side of the ball. Like when the Dolphins and Jets win games, they don't grind them out and win low-scoring games. It's because their offenses win them those games and they win them high-scoring. So with them clashing, I don't hate it. I think this could be a very high-scoring game. So mild take that I somewhat agree with.
Julian's turned into a nice guy now he's a dad. Let's just put that out
It's
there.
tested my patience a lot, which works very well with Bukes, who usually is just spewing garbage at me, and I have to combat it, and now I'm a little bit more understanding from dad to dad.
Wow, heart to heart there, thanks.
So, yeah. My hot take, Steve's going to hate this. We're going to start arguing again, so it's going to be great. Sony Michel, who has not touched 100 yards yet this season, is going to rack up his first 100-yard game of the season. I don't even remember if I said he's going to do it with 2 or 3 touchdowns, so I'll be a gentleman and say he does it with 3 and use the bigger number. 100 yards, probably going to get around 20 carries, 3 touchdowns for Sony Michel. I know Bucks likes the Chiefs in this one. That doesn't mean that the Patriots necessarily win, although they're going to. But it means that Sony Michel is going to have his first signature big game of the season. This is the formula that the Patriots used to beat the Chiefs last season in the first half of that AFC Championship game in that entire Super Bowl run. I think they're going to get back to it here. James White will still be a factor. Julian Edelman will still be a factor. But Sony Michel is going to touch the ball a lot and have a big game against the Kansas City Chiefs in Foxborough.
I had to go back and make sure that I had this correct. He hasn't even scored double-digit fantasy points, and let me check here.
Long time.
2, 3, 4, 5 straight games, and that includes carries of 10, 20. There's a 20 in there. He only scored 8.5. Well, that's a good game right there. This is not somebody who is fantasy friendly. He doesn't get any catches out of the backfield, even though he did do it in college.
I didn't say anything about catches.
Yeah,
I said 100 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns.
I'm just saying how bad of a player he is. Like, this should be the game that Sony Michel does go off because of how bad the Chiefs' run defense has been, which is, by the way, giving up the most fantasy points in the entire NFL. Sony Michel still won't be able to do it. It really says something when James White is taking double-digit carries, double-digit targets. That just shows how much they feel good, how good they feel about Sony Michel. Rex Burkhead probably has a better chance of going for 100 yards than Sony Michel does in this game. And I think Rex Burkhead is playing about 5% of the snaps when all these guys are healthy right now.
There's a reason James White got the carries last week. It's because the Patriots were playing down huge the whole game. They were playing in a hurry-up offense, so White's on the field as the pass catcher. He just takes the handoffs by default.
And also because Sony Michel can't do anything with the carries that he does. Here's what he does.
That's why it's a hot take to say he is going to do a lot with them today.
Here we go. I'm going to reenact. Here's the handoff to Michel. Oh! That's it. That's all he does. He's absolutely terrible. It's not going to happen. My hot take will hit. Julian's, per the usual, will not. Right. Emerson, back to you, buddy.
Is that it?
That's it.
That's all we got. I was worried you were about to fall off the stool there for a second, dude.
I had to do a good
give you mouth to mouth.
Good balance.
Not necessary.
I would have been here for that.
All right, let's put this thing back on the rails. Great job, though. Good hot takes today. Good to have you back, Jules. Get some sleep.
Not really.
Jeff and Greg, they're here for a much more civilized conversation, sharing who they're fading today. Jeff, who are you staying away from in the 1 o'clock hour?
I'm going to stay away from Odell Beckham. I mean, I get it. Like, it's the cost thing, and I always like going after cheap players who potentially buy low situations. But I just, like, the Cleveland offense is moving at a snail's pace. They're playing at a team that basically is always just trying to keep these games close and make it ugly. It's windy. Not good for a guy with like a busted up hand as your quarterback either. And then we got this hernia news coming out. I'm the least worried about the hernia news because I've been playing through it all year. But I just feel like you look at that range. You got Cortland Sutton. You got Kenny Golladay going up against the weak Vikings secondary. You've got players cheaper than Odell Beckham with some good upside. I just don't really feel like I need to take a shot here. So I get that the matchup's not that bad, but I'm out on Odell this week for sure.
Yeah, Jeff, and like moments ago, you got Jay Glazer reporting that Odell has been telling opposing players and coaches before and during games, "Come get me."
Come get me.
Like,
just kidding, but not really. Seriously.
Here we go
DM
again.
me.
Greg, you're fading.
I mean, the drama with Odell is just another thing. I mean, it just adds to it. Who knows what the relationship is with this quarterback right now? We've given Odell enough chances. I feel like now you can cut the cord and you feel okay about not going there.
This would be a perfect time to use the Bill Belichick like drinking orange juice meme.
Yeah.
Greg, you're fading the 1 o'clock hour.
So I'm going with Dalvin Cook here, and this is a pretty risky fade just because it's a really plus matchup, and we know how high of upside Dalvin Cook has. But still, I think the Vikings should win this game pretty handily. He's not 100% right now. So for the price, I'd rather just spend the extra money to go up to Christian McCaffrey, because I do really worry that what happens if the Vikings dressed up really big and they just put Madison in like the second half just because they don't really want to try to run down Dalvin Cook at this point in the season.
Okay, how about in the late slate? Who are you fading, Jeff?
Yeah, first of all, I really like that fade by Greg there. I just sorry, so many people, too many people on the show, but no, I agree. I mean, I feel like Alex Madison could actually be a play today that might actually end up being in like a couple winning lineups. It wouldn't shock me, anyways. I'm gonna fade Benny Snell from the afternoon games. I get it. He's getting the early down work, and he's going up against the Arizona Cardinals, which is a great matchup. But I mean, you really need to step back and look at this situation. They're starting their third stringer quarterback. Jalen Samuels is going to take most of the passing game work, so his PPR floor is not very high. If he does not get into the end zone, if he doesn't start off the game well, or if Arizona gets in front here, I mean, there's such a big chance of a bust here. I'm just not really sure why people are excited about this play. You also have a running back who, quite frankly, doesn't really grade out as an elite player or an elite athlete or anything like that. So all things considered, if I was going to take a shot, I'd probably just go up to Samuels and hope he catches like 10 passes today. I think that's actually got a better chance of working out than Benny Snell.
Okay, Greg, who are you fading in the late slate?
I guess that was better than being called Brandon, I guess. So I'll take it. It's the lesser of two evils. Same game as Jeff, but I'm looking at the other side, Kyler Murray. I understand he's had a ton of upside this year throwing the ball because the Cardinals, how often they throw and the pace they've played at. But still, the offensive line has been so bad. And if we look at what happened to Kyler Murray last week, I'm not sure if he's 100% healthy at this point in the season. He's getting just destroyed almost every time that he's dropping back right now. So against the Steelers defense, it's been pretty solid, especially as of late. I don't really love this spot for Murray.
All right, you two hang tight. One more break to go until y'all make it rain on our viewers. Until then, here's Pat Mayo with some sleepers and value plays for today.
What up, everyone? Pat Mayo here inside the Pat Mayo Experience Studios. So, hello to you all. Enjoy the sweat as it's going along, but I'm going to take a quick break here to talk about some of the cheaper plays on DraftKings to fill out the back end of your lineups this week. Running back, there's a lot of guys you can pay down for. Is it actually Patrick Laird week at $4,100? It seems like a lot of the public is jumping in on that. Not so much for me. I actually think you should pay up at running back this week. But Patrick Laird is $4,100. Darwin Thompson is $4,000. He's another option to use against New England. Both pass-catching running backs should provide a very good floor for DraftKings scoring. I don't know what their upside is, though. But if Josh Jacobs is actually declared out, and we're probably not going to know that until very, very late in the day after lock actually happens, that I would look into potentially late swapping onto DeAndre Washington at $3,000. Just to keep that in the back of your mind, because frankly, people do not utilize the late swap enough in the Millionaire Maker main slate on DraftKings, and you could potentially get a starting running back in a pretty decent situation, less than a 3-point game against Tennessee at home for the min possible, and he'll have like 2% ownership. So DeAndre Washington, keep him on your radar if the news breaks properly. Receiver, if I like to pay up at running back this week, I like to pay down at receiver because I think there are legitimate options that you can end up using. $4,100 or below, Auden Tate, Deontay Johnson, and Corey Davis with Adam Humphries out, I think are all viable. I especially like Auden Tate, but Paris Campbell is returning for the Indianapolis Colts this week. I think he'll take the spot over Marcus Johnson. A lot of people using Zach Pascal, a lot of people using Jack Doyle. Paris Campbell is someone who can play upwards of 90% of the snaps in the Colts offense against one of the worst pass defenses in football, and he's $3,200. You need savings? It's not a bad way to save some cash in your DraftKings lineup. Quarterback, it's pretty simple. There's two guys that really pop off the charts as nice value. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Tannehill. Hope they don't go bust because I would lose a lot of money this week. But I do think those are the salary cap savers. Another situation where you can probably pay up at quarterback. It's pretty flat in terms of distribution. There's not one quarterback who looks like he's going to be more owned than anyone else. So the choice is yours of who you want to use, but those are two cheap guys. Derek Carr, you might be able to throw onto that, but frankly, that is not an offense, at least passing-wise, that you want much exposure to. Tight end, you can pay all the way down to the bottom at $2,500 because Greg Olsen is out. Ian Thomas is sitting right there. Or go to 40 in the low $4,000 range. That Jets-Dolphins game is expected to score a lot of points. Mike Gesicki has at least 6 targets in each of his past 4 games. He continues to develop a rapport with Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Jets stink against tight ends. Mike Gesicki is a low-owned part of that game. He's super cheap. He is someone that you can squeeze onto your roster, no problem. Jack Doyle is also cheap. He projects to be the highest-owned player on the tight end slate for the Colts. I like Jack Doyle enough, but if you want to pivot off to a cheaper guy, Mike Gesicki, I wouldn't hate that either. Defenses, if you're looking to pay down, which a lot of people are, I mean, at the top, you can go Vikings, you can go Steelers. I like both them, but at 22 and 2,100, Kansas City Chiefs defense, Cincinnati Bengals defense. I like both those teams this week in general. I think they can both harass the opposing quarterback, whether it be Baker Mayfield or Tom Brady. I think there's ample opportunity to generate pressure, sacks, and potentially turnovers, which you hope turns into a 6 the other way. And then you have the highest scoring defense for almost no money whatsoever, allowing you to pay up at the positions you want. I'm Pat Mayo. You can always check me out at the PME on Twitter, and that'll do it for me. Back to the sweat.
Hello, everyone. It is the final segment of the show. That is when these guys make it rain. Steve, Jules, Jeff, and Greg. You guys give us your DFS play. That'll absolutely make it rain cash for the people. So like your slate-approved pick.
All right, and we'll see how the rest of the panel feels about your selection, too, when you make it rain. Jules, you're up first. Please make it rain.
Yes, so I'm going to go with Michael Thomas here at $8,300. He's a guy that I often go with here, but I just feel like in this matchup, he's going to be a little bit overlooked with his price coming all the way down to 8,300, coming off his worst game of the season. With guys like Davante Adams who are going to be popular, some people might like Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. It's just a week where you can finally talk yourself out of Michael Thomas, and I don't think it's the time to do so. I'll take the savings and play him with confidence at home against that 49ers defense because he's still going to get his 10, 12, 13 targets, and I think he's going to make the most of them. He's good for another 100-yard game and a touchdown. I like the Saints a lot in this game. I think Michael Thomas should not be getting overlooked at all and is still going to be the best receiver on this slate.
Who has some strong feelings about Michael Thomas?
I mean, like for me personally, like this was definitely one that I was struggling with all week long because, you know, you get Michael Thomas who's been as consistent as he is, but this is definitely the toughest matchup that he's faced. But he's just an absolute target monster each and every week, regardless of the matchup here. You know, if Alvin Kamara has trouble moving the ball against a very good 49ers run defense, they might have to rely on Thomas even more than usual here. So at the depressed price point, yeah, I kind of like what Julian is. You just gotta play him here. I don't see how you can fade him.
Greg? How about you, bud? Make it rain, please.
Oh, I was gonna respond to Julian's.
Have
pick,
at
I
it.
can make it rain too.
Do both.
Yeah. You want to do both? Go ahead. We got a couple minutes.
I'll do both. So,
Thank you.
So here's the thing with Michael Thomas. I do think Alvin Kamara is going to be one of the most popular plays on the slate. So there is leverage there in rostering Thomas. But still, I don't really love this spot for the Saints offense just because the 49ers defense has been so good this year. The other thing to consider also is that Drew Brees hasn't really been lighting it up since he came back from the thumb injury. I think it still might be a little bit of an issue. So I don't know if those are any things that Julian considered there, but
I considered them, and I decided I don't care about them. And we'll be playing Michael Thomas, and he'll be making it rain.
He's so grouchy.
Okay, let's find out who Greg thinks is going to make it rain.
So I'm going with Jalen Richard here, and I kind of thought this was a little bit of a sneaky pick, but then Pat Mayo, right before, was talking about the Raiders running back situation. So Josh Jacobs, he's a real game-time decision. He has a broken bone in his shoulder or something like that, and there's a real chance he gets ruled out. And if that happens, there's going to be a chance where Richard and DeAndre Washington are both going to play really significant roles for really cheap at running back, and just nobody else is going to swap to them. So I have Richard in lineups right now. I have some exposure to Washington also, and if Jacobs ends up playing, I'm just going to take them out. But I think for now, it's a really good spot to just have them in because it's a really cheap, great value spot that people just might not be on if the injury news breaks correctly.
And after Greg was mean to me, I'll actually give Greg a compliment. I like that play a lot, especially with the way that this slate is shaping up. Everybody's going to be on Bilal Powell for $3,500. So even if you prefer Washington over Richard, although I like Greg's pick, either one of those guys is going to be a great pivot off of Powell, assuming that they're play-worthy.
You did get some sleep last night. That was very nice.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, since Greg was mean to me, I'm going to be mean to Greg.
Me too.
As soon as I get an opportunity to be mean to Greg, I will.
Wow, won't compromise his advice to be mean. That's big of you. Really
Steven,
big of you.
or Jeff, we haven't even heard from you
Yeah,
yet.
Jeff, what are you
you're in
doing
this
back
segment.
there?
Yeah, you interrupted my segment. You can't talk when you're supposed to.
Are you having a snack, Jeff?
I'm just taking a little break. Yeah, I'm good.
You were having a snack.
I love when Jeff eats on camera, especially like those chewy granola bars that he has.
I think Jalen Richard and GPP is really sharp. Probably more upside there than Patrick Laird if you're thinking of swerving plays there. But I'm going to go with a player who I wrote up at the start of the week I still like, and for whatever reason just is not getting much love this week. It's Mark Ingram. This is a player who, when he's been under $6K in salary this year on DraftKings, he's averaged over 27 DK fantasy points. And he's going up against a Buffalo team who the Ravens are favored by almost a touchdown against. I mean, this is a spot where you should see a lot of Mark Ingram. Buffalo has also really struggled guarding against explosive rush plays. All I've heard in the media this week is how the Bills are going to, do this bracket coverage on tight end and have floaters out there to guard against Lamar. How are you going to start Mark Ingram? I mean, that's the other factor here. He leads all the red zone. He leads the Ravens running backs in red zone touches by a hefty amount. So I think this is a great upside spot. Obviously, there's a bust factor with the running back who doesn't get super involved in the pass game and can get vultured by his quarterback. But I mean, at under 6K, this is when you want to take a shot on Mark Ingram, in my opinion.
All right, does someone want to give a long rebuttal so that Jeff can finish his snack?
Nice play, Jeff.
No,
Good.
Julian.
Excellent. Greg, what do you think? Mark Ingram.
Yeah, so I like it. If we look at the Bills this year, the way to beat them has been on the ground. Like they're a top 5 run defense by DVOA, and they're towards the bottom of the league in run defense DVOA. So it just makes sense that the game plan would be you try to run the ball against them. And then the other thing also, like Jeff said, just people aren't going to play him. People are going to roster Lamar Jackson because people always roster Lamar Jackson, and for good reason. So you play Ingram, it's a little bit of leverage, and hopefully he gets the touchdowns instead of Jackson.
Okay, cool. Steve, we got a lot of viewer questions to get to, but I want you to make it rain first.
Yeah, so real quick, DeAndre Hopkins for me with the news that Will Fuller is officially out of this game. DeAndre Hopkins just becomes an absolute target monster. When Will Fuller has been off the field, he's getting a 34.8 overall target share, 26.7 in the red zone, and then he's going to be seeing shadow coverage from Chris Harris, who's allowing an average of 15 yards per reception so far this season here. I mean, Hopkins is someone that you can play each and every week here, but 7,400 is really cheap price for him in this matchup, especially with no Will Fuller here. So I think Hopkins is somebody you have to play this week.
You feel like you got to play him?
I don't feel like you got to play him because I just said my make it rain pick is Michael Thomas, and it's pretty tough to play both of them. But
actually,
I don't
it's not
mind.
At all.
Oh, what's up,
I didn't even hear what he said.
He said actually it's not at all. You could play both of them.
I was just going to say, but you could fit both of them in.
Well, don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger.
You just saying like it's kind of hard to fit both. No, it's not. Did you make lineups
I'm going to be playing Thomas, and they're similar plays, so I'm probably going to be sticking with Thomas. You can play both of them. You're going to have to sacrifice what I think are better plays at running back.
I think there's a lot of cheap ways you can go at running back.
I mean, there are. You can play Bilal Powell and stuff, but don't you want at least a McCaffrey, a Derrick Henry,
for the value that you're going to be getting
from
Powell and maybe potentially Richard? I think there's enough value there for what they can do.
My problem with the DeAndre Hopkins pick is you're relying on Denver to put up points so that Houston keeps throwing. And that seems unlikely. So, I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you're done with your snack.
All right, good. Well, since you are done with your snack, let's rip through some fan questions here. Fans of our show, obviously. Jeff, would you play Jimmy G or Drew Brees?
Oh, geez. I would actually play Jimmy G. I just feel like there's a better chance that San Francisco's down in this game and has to be throwing a little bit.
Okay.
Greg, Galladay or Landry?
So I'm going to go with Landry here. He's kind of been the number one receiver for the Browns over Beckham. It's a really favorable matchup against the Bengals. And then also you just look at what Landry's done recently. He's been getting a ton of targets. He's been producing really well. He's a great PPR play.
Should I start James Washington over Tyler Lockett? Jules, take that one.
A really hot off-the-radar play, and Tyler Lockett's Mr. Consistency until the last 3 weeks when he's shown us absolutely nothing. So I don't really trust Tyler Lockett right now, whereas James Washington is a guy that's good for 100 yards a game over his last two. He's played well with Duck Hodges, and he has a perfect matchup at Arizona, so it's going to be James Washington for me.
Steve, Wilson or Watson?
That's a pretty close one. I'm going to just go with Watson here. I'll ride the hot hand with Watson. I mean, Wilson was playing at an MVP type level at the beginning of the year, but he's really kind of tailed off, and I think a lot of it has to do with how little Tyler Lockett has been producing too as well. DK Metcalf has been fine here, but if you don't have that big down threat guy, I think it's kind of affected Wilson.
Greg, Robbie Anderson or Tyler Boyd?
So I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson just because of the matchup. He's playing against the Dolphins. We know the big play upside is there for Anderson. With Boyd, the volume's always there, but still a little bit of concern with him against the Browns defense, which just has been pretty solid this season.
Jeff, Debo or John Brown?
No.
I thought he was thinking about what he wanted to eat next.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Debo. I'm gonna go with Debo Samuel. A couple of the San Francisco wide receivers have been ruled out. Marcus Goodwin is out, and so is Dante Pettis. I think Samuel's been playing really well. I just don't like the spot for John Brown, even though most weeks I'd probably take him in the spot.
Julian, I know you like a good defensive question. So Pittsburgh or Houston? Which defense?
Ooh, that's pretty close. I'm going to lean Pittsburgh just because I think they've been more solid. Kyler Murray's going to get out of the pocket, maybe run the ball some, but I think he should get sacked a lot. He's going to be turnover prone. I'll take Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Steve, Tannehill or Murray?
I'm going to go with Tannehill in this one. I think he has a better matchup here. We just saw how much issues he was having under pressure last week when he was facing the Rams. He's going to probably get that same amount of pressure against the Steelers here, so go with Tannehill.
Greg, you like the idea of a Winston, Godwin, Evans stack?
Oh, God.
So that's a lot of salary to use for this slate. So just for the pricing issues, I don't. I think you want to play Winston with either Evans or Godwin, and then the question just becomes, do you pick the right guy? I lean towards Evans this week, but there's upside in both of them, realistically.
Jeff, Chark or Lockett half-point PPR?
I would just go with Chark. I mean, both these guys are kind of a little bit boom or bust. They haven't been getting a ton of targeting, but I feel like Chark is more able to overcome the matchup. And Lockett's target share has just gone down with the addition of like Metcalf and Josh Gordon over the last couple weeks. So give me Chark.
Yeah, Lockett killed me last week, dude. Brady or Kyler Murray?
Cares about that. Brady or Kyler Murray?
Who thought we'd be asking that at this point in the season?
Yeah, I'm going to lean Kyler Murray for the rushing upside, but very close.
How about Rodgers or Watson, Steve?
I'll take Rodgers over that one.
Sorry, I thought
ahead.
you were still looking.
Well, I was going to say Jameis or Matty Ice, but
Okay, ask him. I dare you.
I did.
I think I'll go Jameis. That's another really close one, too.
Ooh, Greg from our loyal viewer, Dylan Schmittler.
Sounds like a good
Mahomes or Rodgers in GPP?
Mahomes or Rodgers in GPP. I'm going to go with Rodgers. The matchup is so much easier. There's a little bit of blowout risk here where they might just kind of ease up on the gas pedal in the second half. But still, if we just look at the upside for Rodgers going up against the Redskins, like they could easily score 40 points in this game, like relatively quickly, and then the blowout won't even be an issue.
Cool beans, man. That's the show, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us. Oh, yes, big announcement. The Sweat, 10 a.m. tomorrow. No longer whatever it was
6
before,
to
6
7.
o'clock.
Now
It is now 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time. Tell everyone.
Monday through Friday, 10 a.m., 11 a.m. We will see you there.
You'll be up because you're not sleeping at all with a kid.
Okay,
I'll be up. I
goodbye.
won't be on the show.
Say goodbye.